What do you think actually happens to a plane the moment it's declared finished? Right now, in a stretch of Arizona desert outside Tucson, close to 4,000 aircraft sit, parked in neat rows under direct sun. Wings and tails bleached pale by the heat, most of them never carrying a paying passenger again. Line them up wingtip to wingtip, and that single row would stretch for something like 100 miles across the desert floor. Somewhere in that line is a jet that was carrying people home just a few years ago. Drained now. Stripped now. Waiting now. So where does a plane actually go the moment it is declared finished, and what happens to everything packed inside it once nobody outside the industry is watching anymore? That desert site is called the Boneyard, and the largest one on Earth sits at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, run by a unit called a MARG. Here's something most people never think about. A MARG does not own a single aircraft parked on its own ground. Every plane out there still belongs to the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard, a foreign government, even the Smithsonian in a few cases. A MARG is just the landlord, the caretaker. The desert itself does most of the preserving work for free, because dry heat and hard soil stop corrosion cold and mean the ground never even needs paving. On the commercial side, the numbers are almost as large. The global aircraft recycling industry was worth about $9.2 billion last year and is expected to nearly double again within the decade because airlines are retiring planes faster than at almost any point in aviation history. Newer engines burn 15% less fuel than older ones, so a perfectly airworthy jet can turn into a financial liability overnight, not because it is broken, but because the plane parked next to it is simply more efficient. So the walk begins the same way every time, and it starts sooner than most people expect. A plane gets its final flight assignment, usually a short ferry hop with no passengers and a skeleton crew, straight to the desert or to a European facility like Tarmac Aerosave in France. The moment it lands, the clock on preservation starts running. Fuel and hydraulic fluid get drained within days. Windows and the flight deck get covered to block sun damage to the interior. Seats get wrapped to keep the fabric from cracking. Every switch on the cockpit panel gets set to off before the battery is disconnected for good. If the stay is going to run long, crews wrap the engines and sensitive openings in a moisture barrier film, almost like industrial shrink wrap, sealing out humidity that would otherwise start corrosion within months. Even parked and silent, the cabin doors still get opened on a rotation just to air the inside out, because a sealed metal tube sitting in the sun for years will start to smell and grow mold if nobody lets it breathe. From there, every aircraft splits onto one of three paths. Some are kept flight ready in case they are needed again, and this happens more than people expect. Some are stripped for parts while the airframe itself is scrapped, and a small number are simply held because nobody has decided their fate yet. The teardown itself follows strict sequence, never random disassembly. Engines come off first, since a single used engine can be worth more than the rest of the airframe combined. Avionics, landing gear, and cockpit instruments follow, each one tagged, photographed, and logged before it ever leaves the hangar. Only after every reusable part is harvested does the aluminum skeleton go to the saw. Modern facilities recover somewhere between 85 and 92% of a plane's total weight, meaning for every $10 of material sitting inside that fuselage, less than $1 actually becomes waste. The aluminum gets melted at a fraction of the energy it would take to mine and refine new metal, and it often ends up back inside a brand new aircraft within months. The same alloy flying again in a completely different plane. Here's the part nobody tells you when this industry gets described as one clean circular loop. In 2023, a supplier called AUG Technics was caught selling more than 60,000 aircraft engine parts with forged safety paperwork, parts that had slipped in through exactly this used parts pipeline that boneyards feed every single day. The director ran the whole operation from a home office, invented fictional employees to answer customer emails, and doctored real certificates, until a maintenance engineer in Portugal noticed a bolt that simply did not fit right. That one mismatched bolt unraveled a scheme worth close to £40 million in losses across airlines on 3 continents, grounding aircraft while regulators scrambled to trace every part back to where it truly came from. The official story is a tidy loop. A plane is retired, its parts get certified, and they return safely to the sky. The fuller reality is that the moment paperwork gets separated from the part itself, even a system this careful can be gamed by one person with a home printer and a laptop. Not every dead plane stays dead, either. Just this year, the Air Force pulled a retired KC-135 refueling tanker out of long-term desert storage after losing aerial refueling aircraft during operations tied to the Iran conflict, reactivating a jet that had already been written off years earlier. It's the same instinct that brought a quarter of the mothballed C-47 cargo planes back out of storage during the Berlin airlift in 1948, an entire fleet the military assumed it would never need again, called back into the sky within weeks of the crisis starting. So the boneyard is never really a graveyard in the way the name suggests. It's closer to a reserve, a parts warehouse, and a waiting room, all at once, where an aircraft's fate depends less on its age in years and more on how many pressurization cycles its frame has already survived. A short-haul jet that flies 6 times a day wears out its structure faster than a long-haul widebody that crosses an ocean once every 24 hours, which is why 2 planes built the same year can meet completely different fates. Most retired jets end their story as recycled aluminum inside the next generation of aircraft. Some end it back in active service years after being written off. A rare few sit preserved on what workers at the boneyard actually call Celebrity Row, historically significant airframes kept whole simply because they matter. None of them just rot quietly in the sun the way people picture it. Every part of that plane, the metal, the wiring, even the paperwork trailing behind it, keeps moving through the system long after the last passenger walked off for good. If a written-off tanker can get pulled back into the sky within months, it makes you wonder what happens to something abandoned in orbit with no ground crew able to reach it at all, which is exactly the situation facing old satellites once they run out of fuel. If this kind of hidden system is the sort of thing you want to keep seeing unpacked stage by stage, subscribing keeps the next one coming.